Spire Functions lets you easily access Spire data directly, customize the data you receive, format it for ease of use, and deploy these functions to users across your organization. Let's dive right in. Before I can create functions, I need to set up a database. If your local computer is a Spire server, setup is easy. In this case, there's only one or two entries to make. First is the name of your Postgres database for the Spire company you want to create functions for. If you're a local administrator, Spire Functions can determine the password for the user Spire app. If it's able to determine the password, it's entered automatically. Now we can go ahead and create some functions. Browsing the list of preloaded functions, we can see that functions are directly related to Spire tables. Every table in the database is represented. Many functions implement criteria to only return specific data. You are spared the complexity of this logic. Simply choose the function that you need. I'm choosing the function that returns the customer bill to address records. I'll include all the optional fields, then click Create Function. The function is created and displayed in the list below. I'll create one more function, Customers. Next, I'll select one of the created functions and click Test. The test feature shows why Spire Functions are so useful. Spire stored some of its data in ways that make it challenging for the average user to work with the data. Here we can see Spire stores monthly sales data in arrays. To parse this string with Excel or third-party programs is tricky, if not sometimes impossible. Spire Functions breaks out these arrays into discrete columns for each month. Here the fields are represented as numeric values that can be easily used in formulas or totals. This time I will select the Customer Address Bill To function. This test shows just the UDF fields, how they're stored in Spire, and how Spire Functions represents them. There are three UDF fields here, com%, division, and hire date stored in a single field. To be useful, they need to be converted to the correct data type, number, date, and text. Spire Functions has split them up into three distinct fields with the correct data type applied. Another area that Spire stores data differently than how it presents it is phone numbers. Here we see Spire Functions displays the phone numbers the same way Spire does on screen. If you're proficient with Excel, you can do string manipulation and add brackets and dashes. But how would your Excel formula manage this? This is a British mobile phone number with the +44 international country code attached. We can also customize our functions using Edit List. I can unselect specific tables and hide them in our list. Expanding each table, I can see the functions common to that table. I'm going to copy an existing function, the Customer Address Bill To table we saw earlier, and paste it as a new function. This function will be specific to the salesperson John and will only show his customers. I now use this new function template to create a function for John. And now we'll test John's function. Here we see the number of customers is now reduced to 65. When using this function, John will not be able to modify it to show anything other than his customers. We can also modify an existing function, here with the customers function we created. We can restrict which fields are included, change the names of fields, or implement advanced SQL formatting or computational operations. Certain fields have no benefit to most users and can be excluded. Certain fields might have sensitive information, like these. We can rename fields to make them more meaningful for our actual use of the field. After updating the function, we can test it. As expected, our field name has changed. And the excluded fields are missing. Another type of built-in function is a join function. These retrieve data from multiple tables at once. One example of this is the customer information including the bill to address. I'm going to select that function and create it. And now I'll test it. Here we see that fields from the customer file prefixed with the words customer. And the address fields prefixed with the word address. As expected, all arrays, UDF fields, and phone numbers have been expanded and formatted as before. The remaining features here are the ability to remove a function from the Postgres database. And to view the raw SQL statement for a function. This is useful if your particular third-party application cannot utilize a Postgres function. You can copy this text into that application and it can use the raw tables directly. Now we have some functions, we can put them to use. The Spire Functions application itself does not require an ODBC data source, but the simplest way to utilize the results of Spire Functions is to create a data source. I normally use the Postgres database name here. If Microsoft Excel is your tool of choice, a workbook can be created with queries and tables linking to the functions of your choice. Select the functions to include. You can add these elements to an existing workbook or create a new one. I'll create a new one. Based on my selections, Spire Functions is creating a new workbook with a query for each function selected. It is also creating tabs named after each function and populating those tabs with live data. I can now work with the data using all standard Excel features. The queries appear in the existing connections window and can be used within Excel just like any other query, for example, to create a pivot table. We can also see them in the Queries and Connections sidebar. Of course, this data is live. Clicking refresh will retrieve the current data from Spire. The queries can also be configured to automatically refresh when the workbook is opened. Not only is this data live from Spire, the functions themselves are dynamic. We can modify a function, and previously deployed spreadsheets will automatically adapt to the changes. I'm going to change the name of this field called Reference. This is done in the same way as before. When I return to Excel and refresh, the new name appears. A primary goal here is to create a standard set of functions available to all users across your organization. You can give a spreadsheet to specific users that only contains the data fields or records they need. You can centrally manage their view of the Spire database. Users in the same role can share the same functions, making the product of their work easily shared in their group. Thank you for watching this demo of Spire Functions.